I just want to be clear with this video, I am not here to defend Nvidia's false claims of performance. I'm just trying to show the difference in coverage after the 5090 reveal compared to before. I think a lot of the current sentiment about DLSS and frame gen in games is kind of clouded by internet, rage bait, content, stuff like that, rather than actually explaining and showing why DLSS might not be something you should be into, something you might dislike or like. It is just purely, we're upset about this now, so you should be upset about it. This video came out yesterday as of me recording this. You can see Linus in his video show like visual anomalies caused by DLSS.
This is Cyberpunk running at 4K on our 5070, and it is getting more FPS than the RTX 4090 that is right beside it. But how many blades is that fan supposed to have? And does my car have extra bumpers?
Now, I don't know if this was a specifically malicious thing they were trying to do, but I've run the same benchmark they ran for Cyberpunk. Those blades are just like that. And I even commented this. The blades are just like that, whether you have DLSS on or not. I know the image doesn't look good, I don't know what I'm doing, but the point is to show that with or without DLSS, with frame gen, there's no difference in the number of fan blades. It's the same every single time. So that was really interesting. And then they say, you know, how many bumpers does my car have? And I'm fairly confident, I can't say 100%, but that looks exactly like the visual effect for taking damage in Cyberpunk, where you get this like distorted glitch. So I don't know if they were just using that as an example, or they were trying to say this is happening because of DLSS. In that video in general, I'm just not the biggest fan of. If you're buying a 5070, like, that's a good card. Like, whether they say it or not, 12 gigs of VRAM is more than enough to run 4K.
As for 4K, guys, we didn't even bother testing that due to the 5070's anemic 12 gigabytes of VRAM.
I have a 3080 and I play 4K all the time, and that only has 10 gigs of VRAM. So I don't really like the excuse of like, we're not going to test 4K because it doesn't have enough VRAM. And then at the end of the video, sheepishly kind of throwing in the DLSS performance right at the end. If you look at it and you think, I don't like the way this visually looks, I totally understand turning it off. But I don't think in the last month people have magically like stumbled on, ooh, you know what, I can tell exactly when the DLSS is on, and I can see all the broken frames, and I just don't think people are doing that. I think it's just like a current outrage thing. I went back and looked at the 3080 review because I was so interested. Like, you don't test 4K on a card that's supposed to be as good as a 4090, and you don't test 4K performance on it. But I went back and watched the 3080 review, and they test 4K, and they even talk about DLSS in that video.
Now, in general, we're still not seeing that 2x performance bump with results closer to 75%, but we're also still outpacing our RTX 2080 Ti by anywhere from 10 to 30%. And at 4K, CSGO really lets the 3080 flex its big gains in memory bandwidth thanks to its 10 gigs of GDDR6X memory. That is a very small drop in performance compared to 1440p.
And I think that clip really shows kind of a big issue right now, where in these older views, when nobody cared about DLSS, it wasn't a current topic, DLSS got used to show increase in performance. And now that people don't like DLSS, it's completely being written off. So it's a weird double standard, but not in any kind of meaningful way. There will be people who don't use DLSS and get a worse gaming experience purely based on the fact that Linus and Mutahar and all these other tech channels and all these people that cover tech don't like it right now, or their audience doesn't like it right now, so they don't like it right now. I do think, though, that the point of a review should be to review the product. And I think what's going on around the product is important to look at, and how the product stacks up to its competitors is really important. But it feels like, in a lot of ways, because this card uses DLSS to hit those numbers, it feels like they kind of purposefully kneecapped it, because I think if they came out with a video in which they were excited, oh my god, look at what this graphics card can do, people would have negative reactions in the comments. And to be fair, it does need DLSS, which that is something you'd have to take into account for you personally. If you're playing a lot of high fidelity games that don't have DLSS, then you might not want to go for this card. But if you're playing a lot of high fidelity games that do use DLSS, and most high-end games nowadays do use DLSS, that's something that I think should be represented. And I think if that's the direction that gaming is going to go, we can be upset about it for sure. If you don't like it, that's for sure an issue. There does need to be like a one step back where people can kind of separate their initial anger for, you know, whatever, the 5090 not making as many frames as they might like, and the DLSS and other frame gen technologies that actually do make a lot of games look better, look smoother, and get hardware that otherwise couldn't perform at these higher resolutions, performing at those resolutions. Taking this card, and taking any card that any company makes, as its own product is really important. I think that should be the point of the review, looking at the product itself. I think taking the company's claims into account is really important as well, because obviously, if you're looking at this raw for raw, no DLSS, this does not meet the claims. But again, I think, why would you not use DLSS if it is there and you have no personal qualms with the visual fidelity? Because genuinely, I don't think many people can tell the difference for when it's on, when it's off. If you go back 1 month, pretty much you'll never hear the words fake frames. I did find actually an instance of it in a Linus Tech Tips video.
On the GPU's tensor cores inserts fake frames in between the real ones that your GPU is actually rendering, literally doubling your frame rate even without upscaling. That's right, it can be enabled without DLSS, which is why I won't be calling it that. This, obviously, makes gameplay look a lot smoother.
But as you can see from that instance, it's not like it's said in like a super negative kind of way, and that video in general is really good, and it has a segment where you can actually see that, you can see them talking about how most people really can't tell, and most people do prefer the smoother look of DLSS.
We played a game of Would You Rather. Would you rather play your game without frame generation at 30 frames per second, or at 60 frames per second with frame generation?
Probably want whatever DLSS thing you just put on. Okay, this one automatically.
Oh, definitely the first option. Easily.
Previous setting.
I think this is better.
Yeah?
I really can't tell a huge difference, though.
Okay.
I think I prefer this one.
I want smoother.
I prefer the first one. Oh, this one, hands down.
I'll take smoothness and artifacts every day.
I like this clip in particular because it shows, outside of the current, you know, DLSS is bad, fake frames are bad, it shows that people can see the value in DLSS outside of everyone else's opinion kind of clouding it. I think in general what I'm trying to demonstrate with this is that before, DLSS was just a slider, a thing that got you more FPS. In that 3080 video, it's thrown in, no distinction, there's no like, this is the game in DLSS, this is the game out of DLSS. All the way to the point of the newest video, the 5070, where they don't even really show DLSS performance. And I think that's more to do with they don't want people to be angry in the comments than it does to do with the actual graphics card. I did end up running some tests using that benchmark, like I said. Like, I'd love to know if any of you can figure out which is which. Like, I'm fairly confident you can figure out which one of these videos has ray tracing on. Like, I'm fairly confident you can figure that out. I'd be more surprised if you could figure out which ones are the DLSS and which ones aren't. Because a lot of these visual effects, like even without DLSS, still happen. There's still shimmering on heads and stuff. It's obviously, if you're using ultra performance DLSS, the shimmering is very exaggerated. But I played the game 1080p max settings, I ran ray tracing, ran everything, and I ran around the world. I genuinely tried so hard to find things that would just stick out to me. And I ran a DLSS quality mode because I wanted to run ray tracing, so I needed to drop to 1080p. And genuinely, I found like one railing that when I ran it over, it looked very choppy. And then sometimes, like, driving, you could see, like, the front of, like, cars in the distance had this, like, little shimmer effect. But again, I couldn't tell you how much of that is just the game versus DLSS versus, you know, whatever. That's why it's so frustrating to see these larger channels, and this isn't like a call out or anything. It's just frustrating to see them kind of get so audience captured in this way. And with a feature that I genuinely think is cool, NVIDIA, to all their things that they consistently lie about, performance in their, or maybe lie isn't the right word, but consistently hide the truth of performance in their announcements and everything. There's some cool features. RTX voice, or I guess it's broadcast. It hasn't been voiced for a long time, but the RTX broadcast with all of the cool AI effects, I think that stuff's really cool. You're listening to it right now. It's the one reason I really like NVIDIA products, is because despite all the background noise in my room or anything like that, I can get a really clean audio all the time while I'm playing games. This isn't a video essay about why DLSS is good. This is just a commentary video, so I don't want to go making more and more demonstrations of DLSS versus non-DLSS. My main point is it's kind of just a critique of general internet outrage. So if you did make it to the end of the video, thank you for watching. And subscribe. I might stream every once in a while. You never know.
I hate you all. Please do not come back. Goodbye.